Hello and welcome back to Freedom Revamp the podcast. I am your host, Deshawn Green, and I am super excited to be joined by the Writer Salon. Today with me, I have Zen Christian and Jasmine. Say hello to everyone.
Hello.
Now, ladies, we are super excited to spotlight you all in our Spotlight series to discuss the Writer Salon more in depth. But before we get into that, per usual, we always ask our guests, what does freedom mean to you?
You want to take that first, Jazz?
Yeah, I can take it first. So I love that this is a question that you all asked us because that's definitely been something that I've been thinking about just over the course of this year. What does freedom mean to me? So I would say that it means doing whatever you want and having the courage to be brave enough to make the choices that are best for you at the end of the day. So that's sort of my loose definition of how I feel personally about freedom.
Awesome.
Yeah, I love that. Mine is kind of similar. I definitely view freedom as unapologetically like taking up space, and just being able to do that in its entirety and not worry about judgment or if you're taking a space for someone else, and just being able to like fully exist in that moment.
I love that, ladies. I definitely feel like every time we do the show, I hear different definitions, and they all kind of coincide with what my definition of freedom is. But it also adds to it and makes me think deeper about it. Because one thing that Courtney, our founder, talks about is freedom as a practice, and it's something that will change and evolve for us as life goes on. So, as I mentioned that, I'd like to segue into my next question with freedom being a practice. How do you guys go about practicing freedom on a regular basis?
That's a really good question. I would say that I actively do it through my creative endeavors, because I'm often just kind of creating whatever feels right for me and not thinking about what people may be interested in and what will catch others' eye, but more so what I need to get off of my chest and to express to myself. And so I think I definitely actively practice freedom through my art and my poetry, and just creative things like the Writer Salon.
And I would say the same because it's been really freeing to let go of the practice of feeling like everything I create needed to be for someone else, or that it needed to perfectly align with whatever the analytics say and what everyone else wants. But it's really finding purpose in knowing that I am creating for myself, and that feels very freeing.
I love both of those answers because I too am a creative. And one of the things that's so important to me, you guys keep mentioning like making sure that you're creating for you. And I feel like as I look at art and I look at media, we've lost that in some sense. A lot of people are creating for others, and they're creating what they know is going to be popular or whatever the case may be. But sometimes that's not always fulfilling. So I love that both of you ladies are being very intentional about creating art that's fulfilling to you, because that's the reason why you were given the gift.
I love that.
So as we segue into today's conversation, I am super excited to explore further the Writer Salon. I was able to take a look at you all's Instagram, and besides the aesthetic, it's just really a very beautiful page to view, looking at the writer's prompts and things like that. It's just very engaging, but also, of course, the aesthetic is outstanding. So before we get into the aesthetic of it all, I'd love to talk more about the depth and where it originally came from and its origin. So how did the idea of the Writer Salon come about?
I would just want to say, like, in general, on a simple note, I think it started with Chelsea, Jazz, and I all just kind of being in a space where we wanted to do more and expand with our writing, but wanted to do it in a supportive, like, community space. And I think at the heart of it, that's kind of the seed that started it all. But Jazz, I know you can definitely expand more on it.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was at the height of the protests during the summer. And Chelsea, who isn't able to be here with us today, but shout out to Chelsea.
Hey,
She posted in her story about, hey, does anyone want to write with me tonight? And I responded and I was like, yeah, I would absolutely love to write with you. So we created some poems, and we were able to bounce ideas off of one another and ultimately publish those on both of our separate pages. But we thought that it was such an amazing experience that we were able to hold space together in such an important time. And we were wondering, like, okay, how do we do this again? And how can we open this up to more folks? And so Chelsea and Zen, they already knew each other. So they were,
we went to high school together.
yeah, so they were able to connect. And then we just decided that, okay, what do we want to call this thing? What is the Writer Salon about? We wanted to create a space that was centered around folks identifying as Black women, as well as also provide space for women of color allies, to share our love through literary art. So that's really where the Writer Salon came from.
And again, I love that because you talk about how it came from something that you all were doing for yourselves, and it just so happened to be something that you thought that others might need as well. So, or that you wanted to have others be a part of. So again, it's that being obedient to what your soul is requesting or what your soul requires, that kind of made things come about, and that's beautiful. So what was your original intent in creating it? You guys talked about a little bit how you just wanted to open up that space. Was that always the intention, or was that something that came along later?
I would say that was always the intention, but it definitely has evolved and grown even deeper and like rooted in that intention as we've continued on, especially through a year of being in a pandemic, and being able to actually foster space and a safe space at that for women of color and Black women. I think definitely started to build upon it as we got further into our, what is the Writer Salon.
Absolutely. And then I would say, as we saw the reception of the events that we were holding and the content that we were putting out, it just gave us so many different branches on the tree to think about, well, these are things that we think the community might be interested in, just based upon what we originally started with the writing sessions. But then we saw that folks are really interested in the writing prompts or the other types of things that we were building. And that's really what has driven us to pursue different avenues within how we can build out the Writer Salon.
Awesome. So what would you tell our listeners is the benefit of the Writer Salon for Black women writers?
I would say on a creative note, because I guess on a creative and then a personal. On a creative note, for people that may just be starting out in writing, whether that be journaling, fiction, poetry, because Chelsea, Jazz, and I, we all kind of dabble in different writing realms, if you will. But, we all also do poetry at the same time. But we wanted it to also be a space for people to safely kind of enter the realm of writing without feeling intimidated or shamed or like they couldn't do it because all of these people are so good, but to believe that they are just as good as anybody else as well.
Love that. Love that.
And I'd absolutely echo that.
I'm sorry, go ahead. You can answer.
Yeah, I'd absolutely echo what Zen said. 100%. I don't have anything else to add.
Fair enough. That's what happens when you're in sync. So moving on, I just wanted to know, what's been the most rewarding part about creating the Writer Salon for you all? You talked a little bit about earlier how it opened up a space for you all, but opening up that safe space, how rewarding has that been for you all?
You want to start, Jazz?
Yeah, I can start. It's been extremely rewarding because I feel like I was able to find a group of people who are interested in a lot of the same things that I am. So I think that the Writer Salon has made me a better writer. It's made me feel safer to share how I'm truly feeling. And I think it's really unlocked a new sense of purpose for me within how I am creating and what I'm creating. So I feel like the Writer Salon has been super beneficial for my personal growth as a person and for my growth as a writer as well.
Awesome.
Yeah, for me, it's definitely been super rewarding. I love facilitating and teaching workshops. I teach for a nonprofit called Heard and Save for teens, and we teach poetry for them pretty much like 6 months out of the year. So I do that for youth, but it's also always really great working with adults and let alone Black women and women of color, and to be able to not only just give them new writing skills, but to be able to foster a safe space of just personal safety and people being able to be comfortable enough to share very deep things with us, people that we don't know, have never met in person. And the fact that we can foster that type of environment is just like always super rewarding to me, and what keeps me going and wanting to do the things that I do, even though it's always a lot and it can be draining creating giving spaces, but it's also just as rewarding and fulfilling when people fill those spaces with themselves.
Absolutely. I love that. So I'm going to veer away from the questions I shared with you all to ask another question that just kind of came up to me. What has been your favorite piece that has stemmed from the Writer Salon?
Ooh, that's hard.
That's a good one.
I know you guys are probably like banging out some really great what's the best piece, your personal favorite piece that you've created through the Writer Salon?
Okay, if I had to pick one, I would say that the poem that I wrote during our share time at our last writing session about body positivity was my favorite work. Absolutely, hands down.
I think I want to say our first one that I wrote a piece for a yellow series I'm doing for my next book, and I don't know, like it came out super easy and super just flowed, and I finished it by the end of our salon, and I was just super jazzed about it because I think it just really, we were working with metaphors, and it just really captured what I had been trying to express for a minute now, and so I think that definitely was a great workshop.
And I think that's why I like the body positivity poem so much, because I felt like I was really able to translate how I was feeling into the poem. I was able to channel it so well. So I think that's probably why I picked that too.
I love that. So I might have to actually take you guys up on this opportunity, because I dabbled in writing. I have friends who are close to me who have a stronger love for poetry and things like that, but growing up, I would always be the one that would be like writing super long posts to put on my Facebook page or things like that, so that I could express myself. And then the older I got, of course, journaling it's a thing now. So writing in my journal and diary and things like that, I always loved to write. And I just recently started tapping more into poetry, and I can thank my church home for fostering that, because I'm always performing for something. So it's beautiful. Write a lot more. But I just love to hear how you guys said like that moment of like everything just kind of flowing onto the page. It's almost as if like I can explain to a piece of paper better than I can explain to someone else what I have to say or what it is I'm feeling. Like the pen just makes it so easy. It's actually very therapeutic.
It is.
Yeah. Because you're not filtering yourself or thinking about how others are going to respond to what you're going to say, because you're talking to you, and you understand how you feel. But I think when we're writing to other people, we're like, they're not going to take it well if I say it like this, so I'm going to say it another way. So we're constantly editing and correcting. So journaling, I think, is fabulous, as well as poetry, to be able to just say what you need to say and be good with it.
Yeah, to free flow and not think so much, because I think the overthinking part of it is what can really keep you stuck in not being able to express what you fully wanted to say.
Awesome. I want to kind of ask another question now. I'm just so intrigued by this conversation. I love it and so freely, but I also want to know a little bit about your style of writing. You guys talk about teaching writing to others, and often, like when we learn about poetry or when we learn about writing in the field of academia, it's usually with some sort of a structure. Are you guys structured writers, or are you kind of free writing, or what's your style of writing?
I would say for me, I predominantly right now write poetry, although fiction and short stories is my background. That I don't, and I've went to school for creative writing, so I've gotten the academic teaching and structure, but I wouldn't say that I put myself in a structure box. I'm definitely on the free writing side. I use form, I would say, for practice when I want to challenge myself and give myself rules. But I mainly love using metaphors. So if I had to define my style, it's very narrative and very immersed in metaphor, because I love being able to express feelings through a different vessel that is other than myself. And a lot more of me trying to capture and express feelings rather than sending a message. Because not everyone can always relate to my experiences, but feelings can be universal. And so I kind of like to think like that when I'm writing. But my style, I definitely would say, is on the storytelling, metaphor vibe.
I love that.
And I'm a little different in the way that I am more of a persuasive and descriptive writer. I love to write culture and beauty opinion pieces in like essay form, as well as free verse poetry. And I think they're two very different styles, but I think they complement each other in the way that there are no rules in my poetry that I have for the more formal essays that I write.
Fair. I think for myself, definitely a beginner when it comes to writing, but one thing that has always resonated for me when writing, because I come from a theater background, I am very descriptive in my poetry. I like to almost kind of write in a form that might kind of be indicative to like stage direction. So it kind of like paints a picture instead of like actually like filling in the blanks and telling the story. So it allows like the person who is reading my poetry or hearing my poetry to fill in the blank. And that's just because that's the way my brain has always worked. So for me, it's like I can give you these pieces and then you can fill it in with your imagination. But my brain pretty much works in movies. So when I go to a lot of it is like just description of what I'm seeing in my head or what my thoughts are. It's usually very descriptive. So that's pretty much how I resonate on paper.
Wow, that's really intriguing.
And really cool.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So I was exploring and I noticed that you all have a hashtag called the Salon Stories. And I wanted you to talk to us a little bit about that hashtag.
Oh God, we went through a lot of different hashtags before we got to that gem. We spent a couple weeks, Jazz, I think, going back and forth in our little chat trying to figure out what we wanted and how it was going to like sum up everything that we wanted to kind of emulate with our salons.
Yeah, absolutely. So that hashtag was and is the tag that we use when we share out the things that our participants write at our monthly writing sessions. So we wanted to find something that would absolutely encapsulate everything that the Writer Salon is, as well as spotlight our participants if they had chosen to consent to sharing their work out with us on the page.
That's awesome. So you guys have talked about what you guys have done and how everything has started. I want to talk now about how do you believe the Writer Salon will grow and continue to expand in the coming years?
Oh, um, that's a deep question. I think we have a lot of different visions and intentions and dreams for the Writer Salon. I know down the line we want to be able to kind of build more of a brand and like a presence as far as being able to do like maybe things like stationery and more interactive engagement, people to rep being with the Writer Salon, um, and things like that. So I definitely on a more brand business scale expanding in that manner, but I think also with just our salons in general, we're definitely hitting back to the drawing board trying to figure out more ways to be more intentional and kind of universal with our salon topics and stories that we choose to kind of tell in the salons we host, and just trying to figure out more ways to connect even more with our followers and our participants.
Love that. So I want to thank you, ladies, for sharing a little bit of your stories and how they coincide with the story of the Writer Salon. The Writer Salon sounds like something I want to be a part of for sure. So before we leave, I have to have you all share with our listeners how they can be a part of what you all are doing, and then more importantly, what you have coming up next, and how they can stay abreast to what you'll be doing in the future.
Absolutely. So you can find us on Instagram at Writer Salon. And on this Instagram page, we have a lot of fun stuff, affirmation charts, writing prompts. We even do playlisting time to time. And we will have our next writing session in April. We're really excited to be back. It'll be our first one for this year, where we will be exploring the topic of how we have all changed within this year from the COVID pandemic and everything that has happened. So you can also stay abreast on what we're doing on that page, as well as follow our personal pages where we also share different writing tips, as well as our latest poetry releases or the things that we're writing. I know Zen also has her own business where she makes some really cool handmade art pieces, and I'll let Zen share out her information, and we'll also tell you all the page for Chelsea, our other co-founder, who also shares her amazing work on her personal pages as well.
Yes. Well, again, my name is Zen Christian. My Instagram is everything_Zen Christian, spelled exactly how it sounds. Yeah, I am a mixed media artist and a poet. My shop name is Ambient Willow, also on Instagram. I do little painting stuff, sculptures, coming out with some hand-painted tote bags and t-shirts coming up this month. Trying to keep myself busy, but in a fun, creative, productive way. And I'm also teaching workshops on the side on Sundays. I have another one coming up next Sunday at 2:00 about conflict and poetry, which is usually a technique often found used in prose, but trying to revamp it and figure out how we can manipulate it to our benefit in poetry.
That is awesome.
And you can,
Go ahead.
And you can find me at Hey Jasmine Halley, and Chelsea is at By Chelsea Salon. And I am a culture and beauty writer as well as a poet.
Awesome. Well, thank you, ladies, so much for joining us. It truly has been a pleasure. I am super excited to potentially join you guys in the coming months at one of these salons and encourage our listeners to do the same. Before we leave, I usually like to give a homework assignment. And because you guys are so lovely with the prompts on your page, can I behoove you to share with us off the top of your dome just a brief prompt that our listeners can try out just so that they can dabble in some writing of their own?
Yes, I usually always try and have one ready when I need one from my kiddos. So one thing I like to do every now and then is exploring duality in writing. So I would always say a great quick prompt to do is writing 2 poems that explore different feelings about the same subject. So one that we often do with my students is writing about your bed. So you do one poem writing about your bed in a positive manner and the other in a negative manner. And you usually will find that you have a hard time with one or the other if you really enjoy being in your bed or if you really enjoy being productive. So it's a great way to kind of figure out a little bit more about yourself and figure out a little bit more how you feel about things and why.
Awesome. Well, everyone, take notes, write that down. Go ahead and take that writer's prompt and begin your writer's journey. Maybe you're a beginner like myself, or maybe you are experienced in writing. Either way, we encourage you to join and follow the Writer Salon in their journey as they are continuing to open and create a safe space for Black women writers. Ladies, thank you so much for your obedience to the craft and to your art. And thank you again for joining us here on Freedom Advance, the podcast. As always, remember to practice freedom. We love you guys. Take care.